The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated across the United States into an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten, and I welcome you to the show. Yesterday we talked about the president's plan to try to keep people in their homes, and that's great for people who are struggling to remain in their homes, who may be able to salvage what they have as a result of the plan. But there are a growing number of people in the United States who are homeless, and the face of the homeless in the United States is changing. Unemployment is approaching in the United States 8%. Homeless shelters are already pushed to capacity. Now there is an increase of white-collar workers who are losing their jobs, and in many cases, they are losing their homes. Now, what will they do? Will they go to the homeless shelters and live with people they try to avoid all their lives? Even if there's a place for them in the shelter, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Shannon Moriarty, who writes about homeless for Change.org. She knows about the subject. She's worked with homeless people. Before we get to Shannon, I want to read you a story from today's New York Times. Newly poor swell lines at food banks nationwide, goes the headline. And I quote from Morristown, New Jersey, Cindy Dreesen and her husband live in one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. They have steady jobs, his at a movie theater and hers at a government office. Together they earn about $55,000 a year. But with a 17-month-old son, another baby on the way, and as Ms. Dreesen put it, the cost of everything going up and up, the couple went to a food pantry this month to ask for free groceries. Now, I am hearing that food pantries are not only getting fewer contributions because the corporations who previously helped stock them just don't have the discretionary income in this economy, but the demands on them are greater. And in fact, I heard an interview on NPR about a woman who was a volunteer at a food pantry for many years and suddenly found herself destitute, and now she is going to the very food pantry where she was volunteering to look for assistance. The fact that in a county, Morristown is in Morris County, New Jersey, where the median household income, according to the New York Times, exceeds $82,000 a year. And that a family bringing home that amount of money still is having trouble making ends meet really explains to us the seriousness of the situation, how difficult it is. Now, I'm not suggesting that the government should resolve all the problems of the world. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine this morning about these issues, and he seemed to be a little less than compassionate about them. So I spoke to him on the level in which I'm speaking to you about how we need to have compassion for one another, that there are people, there's a stereotypical view, correctly or wrongly, about people who are homeless that has prevailed, that they're on drugs or they're alcoholics or they're mentally ill or they just don't want to work. And certainly a certain number of them fall into one of these four categories or more. But that's not true about everybody who's homeless or who's having trouble bringing home enough food to feed the family. So he kept answering me when I raised this issue on with the typical political arguments. Well, what the government is doing, and you got to trickle down, and what Obama is doing. He was very negative about Obama, wishing that we had somebody who was tightening up the economic screws rather than letting the money out, because Wall Street isn't responding. Money hasn't even been released. Wall Street isn't responding. Okay, whatever. I understand all that, but I wasn't discussing this with him on a political basis. I had not even raised the issue of how we should be approaching the problem. I was just discussing with him the problem. And I think we need to discuss this problem, figure out what the solutions may be. We were delayed in getting our guest, Shannon Moriarty, because she was on a horrible phone line, but we have now reconnected with her on one that works. As I said before, she writes about homelessness for change.org. She knows about the subject. Shannon has worked in homeless shelters and service organizations in San Francisco, the Triangle region of North Carolina, and currently in the greater Boston area. She's a graduate student studying housing and urban policy at Tufts University. Shannon Moriarty, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. I know you only caught a snippet of my precursor to our discussion, but basically I was parroting what you wrote recently on change.org, that the face of homelessness is changing, that people are coming from a higher socioeconomic stratus to food pantries and to homeless shelters now, or are living with friends or relatives, or even in their cars or their RVs because they have no place else to live. How does this change the dynamic of our attempts as a society to assist people who are suddenly finding themselves without a permanent place to live?
Well, I have two answers to that. Number one is dealing with the immediacy of this crisis. Right now, little shelters and service organizations across the country are finding themselves completely strained with the overwhelming demand for food and shelter beds and assistance. And with the recession on our hands, a lot of these organizations are finding their budgets cut. They're having to let staff go, at a time when demand is getting more increased than ever. So that's obviously the biggest thing going right now. That's on the forefront of everyone's mind. But the second piece of this is that when you have middle-class people falling into this terrible state of homelessness, when they find themselves struggling, it gets everyone talking about it. So it becomes an opportunity to get people to listen, because the truth is that homelessness existed even before we had a recession on our hands due to structural inequalities in our society that forced a lot of